What up, YouTube? It's Kurt here. So, if you haven't heard recently that Lunalight has topped a YCS, well, you've been living under a Yu-Gi-Oh rock, theoretically. All right, but we're gonna discuss part of this. This is mainly a turn two deck, and a lot of people are having an outcry about Azathot. I'll call it Azathot. Some people say Azathot, whatever. But anyway, we'll call it Azathot because it's real thoughty. All right, so a lot of people are calling for this card in particular to get banned, or at least something happening with rank up magic. And whilst I want to make this more discussion based, I'm not going to give like a definite opinion on which card needs banned. I am in the arena to where I do agree, at least with in principle, that as a thought, something does need done about cards like this. And this card probably shouldn't be playable on the first turn. And however you fix that, there are probably multiple ways to go about fixing that. But yeah, you shouldn't be able to get this. You shouldn't be able to get this up on your opponent's turn. It's just too ridiculous. So I've heard some arguments from people that, because it's not meta, it's not. It literally makes this deck good, and you shouldn't take away something that makes a not very good deck good. And while I hear that, and the thing is, like, we're in a weird point where, yes, it is true that some people haven't done this double standard. If you don't think that Thunder Dragons need hit, but you do think Azathot needs hit, then you hold a major, major double standard, because Thunder Dragons, as they are just so ridiculously overpowered, and the mechanics of them are just completely ridiculous. Basically, the only way to get Thunder Dragons off the field is that if you're running kaijus and you can only get one pop. Normally you're dealing with multiple Colossus at the same time. Colossus probably needs limited. And the thing is, Colossus is virtually indestructible once it's on the field. It has 2600 attack or more, depending on if you activated thunder monsters in your hand, which that's just totally ridiculous. They don't even have once per turn clauses. If Colossus and Titan had once per turn clauses in them, it might be a little bit better. But that's just one thing Konami did not omit from them. So, but just because that deck is so overpowered, it doesn't make this mechanic fair. And that's what we want to focus on. If a card should be banned, a card should be banned. If a card has unfair effects, no matter, even if other decks have unfair effects, we shouldn't have any unfair effects like in the meta. I understand as a card company, they want to sell cards to a degree, but eventually they should have the sunset on them eventually. That's what happens. Eventually, it goes through cycles. Eventually, Thunder Dragons will get hits because they're so ridiculously OP, and eventually, yeah, I think depending on what happens, but the thing is, Azathot actually runs well in multiple decks. It's not just Lunalight. I've not seen all. I can't tell you all examples. I'm not as well versed as I probably should be to give a full opinion on it. But like, all you need is a a 4-star, a rank 4 monster, which really isn't hard to achieve. You need a rank 4 monster, and you need a rank up. That's all you need in order to get Azathot on the field, and basically your opponent cannot play Yu-Gi-Oh. That's the thing to consider. This thing, monster effects and extra deck are so vital to modern Yu-Gi-Oh play. To have something that just basically makes your opponent lose one turn is just completely ridiculous. And we are entering a meta in which hand traps are less prevalent, but there's yeah, they're less prevalent, but I mean, you can still use them, and maybe you can get it off, but you shouldn't necessarily have to rely on hand traps to make sure your opponent doesn't completely wreck you turn one, because hand traps are completely RNG based as to whether or not you draw them, and hand traps also add a lot of clogging tendency to your deck, and that's not something that's ideal for a healthy meta. If you're forced to play hand traps, that's kind of a sign of an unhealthy meta. That's just my opinion, but I think a lot of really good and seasoned players would agree with that. So it's not that I want Lunalight to be a bad deck. I think it's very elitist to think that, but I'm just a person that's against unfair effects. And if we consider that, so honestly, we look at cards like Skill Drain. Um, Obviously, Skill Drain is a low maintenance card and basically doesn't let your opponent play Yu-Gi-Oh. If you hard draw Skill Drain, a lot of times that just wins you the game. And like I'm in the arena where it probably will never get hit by Konami just because it does benefit some like lower decks. It doesn't always benefit like the main tier 1 meta right now, but it's just the effects of it are just so ridiculous for the modern era that it probably should be banned based on principle alone. But this is that card where it could see even more play than cards like Skill Drain or cards like what am I thinking of? The Imperial Order. To where you see it in a lot more decks, and that's just my opinion. But it's in those realm of cards that probably should be banned. So that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about that. Also, feel free to post any decks that aren't Lunalight that also can take severe advantage of Azathot. So appreciate it. I appreciate it, guys. That's just my opinion on the topic. Let me know what you guys think, and peace.